Teach me about the Great Lakes. Teach me about the Great Lakes. Welcome back to Teach Me About the Great Lakes, a twice-monthly podcast in which I, a Great Lakes novice, ask people who are smarter and harder working than I am to teach me all about the Great Lakes. My name is Stuart Carlton, and this is episode 100, 100, a century, 100. And for that, there's only one person I could ask to join, which is Renie Miles, strategic communicator, here for number 100. How are you, Renie?
I'm so excited to be here for the big anniversary.
Me too. We started this in December of 2019. So that was, 4.5 years ago. A lot has happened in 4.5 years. Some of it work related. And we've learned a lot. I was going to do like a top 10 things I learned. And then I was going to do like a top 5 things I learned. And then I was going to maybe just mention one thing I learned. But the thing is, there's a lot going on right now. And so I did none of those things. Instead, what I decided we would do is just invite back onto the show our old friend Sarah Zack. So let's bring her on right away. Tout sweet, as we say in France. Our first guest who Teach Me About the Great Lakes was Sarah Zack, Pollution Prevention Extension Specialist at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. Our 100th guest, believe it or not. 100th guest.
I can't believe it's been 100 episodes. It's crazy.
I can't either. It is. This is your third, right? Or fourth? You're on 3% of episodes.
I don't remember, honestly.
It's third or fourth, yeah. Every 25 episodes or so, we got to get Sarah on, or it's a problem. Yeah. It's a real problem. Anyway, hello, Sarah. She is with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant and also with the University of Illinois Extension, I suppose. We should give credit where due. And doing a lot of groundbreaking and important work on pollution prevention, a lot of microplastics, a little bit of PFAS, and marine debris, all of which we're going to talk about today. So let's start. Last time we had you on, we did a draft, if you remember. I don't know if this is the last time, but we drafted plastic-free lifestyle choices you could make. And I've been thinking about this because yesterday I was still using my wooden scrub brush on our pans, our pots and pans. It's a little wooden brush, no plastic handle. When I'm done, I chuck them in the fire pit. Not each time, we're not that wealthy. But when they get worn out, I chuck them in the fire pit. It doesn't pay that much. And I still use them. So are there any cool plastic-free stuff that you are still using since then or have started using? As you can tell, Sarah's in the Chicago area, where it is nothing but police.
Sorry.
Oh, that's Renie, who's downtown.
That's the real experience.
There it is. Why is there a black helicopter out of your window? And then,
just ignore those.
Is that the coda from Layla I hear playing? Is that the piano?
Playing Renie out.
Anyway, so let's start there. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm wearing stripes, which is where I'm going to end up, right?
Yes. Yeah. You had a good run. Good run. We needed new. Anyway, Sarah, so any cool plastic, non-plastic items that you've been using lately? You were an early mover on metal straws. Yeah. We had metal straws.
Yeah, well, my straws, I think, have been a big thing in my house that have been adopted because both of my kids are obsessed with straws. And so we've accumulated, I don't know why, but we've accumulated a nice stockpile of metal and reusable, like silicone. We have some silicone straws that they really like. They get a ton of use. Because we used to buy paper straws, but paper straws, I'm not crazy about paper straws. Yeah, they're thank you. Terrible. Yes, they're terrible. They are. And I just read something about paper straws having PFAS in them. That the inside of them, to make them more water resistant, is lined with PFAS. I don't know. I guess I can't say that I've actually seen that study, but I saw a news article about it.
Sometimes I wonder if there's a place on this planet that does not have
I think probably not anymore. Probably not, unfortunately.
Yeah, probably not. No, that is the real problem. And then with PFAS in particular, it's like there are just so many of them.
I don't know how you tackle it as a group when there's so many.
Metal straw is the way to go. Now, how do you
clean
your straws? Do you have a little
I have a little brush. So the silicone straws we have actually have a bend in them, which is, I think, why the kids like them so much, because they're like, bendy straws, basically. And so we have a little brush for them, but really we just don't worry about it. And we just throw them in the dishwasher. And I look in them every once in a while to make sure they're not gross. And if they're gross, then I give them a little scrub. And otherwise, I just throw them in the dishwasher.
You notice when the flow.
Yeah. Yes. The taste is a little bit off when the mold hits. Really, it's because my kids drink a lot. We all drink a lot of smoothies. and we put chia seeds in the smoothies, and the chia seeds get stuck in the straws and they gum up the works.
Oh, yeah, but they also scrub it out. Like, once you get them through, you just blow those suckers through. You get your air compressor.
It's good straw rubbage, right?
Fantastic. Gotta love a good chia seed. All right, good.
Yay!
That was topic 1 on my list. Renie, are there any, Renie, do you use any non-plastic things that you're a particular fan of?
I have to think about it. I definitely will refuse to use plastic sponges in the kitchen and things like that. I have a brush. It's probably plastic, but nonetheless, it'll last much longer than any sponge might.
Yeah. But Sarah, what the problem with this though is I like using that stuff, but I always think I'm really just signaling as much as I'm making a difference, right? Because the amount of scrub brushes I will use in my whole life, or the amount of straws you would use in your whole life, is less than, I don't know, a panel on my car in terms of the total amount of plastic.
Yeah, it's something to make yourself feel good too.
Which is I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think you bring up a good point, and I think this is. Maybe within the past 2 years, we've been seeing this more and more where everybody was really gung-ho about making switches and in their home lives. And you saw straws coming out and reusable containers and people were switching to glass. But just within the past couple of years, you've seen a lot more of how much of a difference am I making popping up when we hear about these huge polluters, right? It's I don't know. I think it's really valid. I think both are valid because it's important, I think, to feel like you're helping and to make those changes, because the more people make these changes, the more of an effect they're going to have. But I do think that on a much larger scale, we need to see some major changes happening. Otherwise, none of this is going to get solved.
Yeah. So with that and having, and how plastic is invading more and more places in our life. It's everywhere virtually. So what are some ways to address it on a larger scale, either using less or proper disposal, or even that it's just
it is.
Giant pile.
I think that if you look at the ocean cleanups and things like that, you see that the biggest plastic producers are beverage companies. So I think that they shoulder a lot of the responsibility for cutting down on what, plastics are in these things. We all used to drink pop out of glass bottles. We all had, and some states still have glass bottles. I can remember growing up, we'd go visit my grandparents in Iowa. We would stop at the gas station. We would get a case of Pepsi in bottles because it tasted better and everybody loved it. And so, maybe we'll see a shift back to something like that soon. But I think really until someone starts holding these producers accountable, we're not going to see big shifts.
And there are other ways you can do it, though. And what you think about with the oceans, they're doing some automated cleanups or some, they're trying to figure out ways because in the ocean they have the big, what do they call it? But
garbage,
the
garbage
trash pile, right? Yeah. And do we see that in the Great Lakes?
Not that I'm aware of. No, the especially microplastics in the Great Lakes kind of cycles throughout the Great Lakes. There's movement with the way that, there's been some interesting studies that have come out that have shown sort of how the plastic accumulates in certain areas and how it moves. And it moves on the surface, but then it also then, as it sort of gets colonized by bacteria and microbes and algae and things like that, it gets heavier and then it starts to sink and then it ends up in the sediment. So you could put a little plastic pellet in the water in Chicago and find it, I'm just going to make this up, but find it, in Buffalo at some point in the sediments because it's gotten so heavy and so weighed down. So, but we don't really see those areas of big accumulation unless you count harbors. Things tend to get trapped in harbors and on beaches, right? They wash up on beaches and near shore areas, but I'm not aware of anything sort of out in the open water where things are accumulating.
Intrinsically, that sounds bad, right? But then scientifically, do we know why we should care? Do we have more knowledge in the past few years about what sort of impacts plastics?
Oh, yeah, because with plastics, last time we talked, 4.5 years ago, 100 episodes ago, right, it was still in that stage where it's we know these are kind of everywhere, but we're still trying to figure out what that means. Are we farther along with that now, as far as you know, or are we still, obviously there's still research going on.
There's still research going on. I think when we talked last time, that may have been right around the time when Carolyn Foley's microplastics paper came out. They did that meta-analysis looking at plastics impacts on different groups of organisms and found that there were certain groups that were more susceptible than others. And it made a lot of sense because smaller organisms, I think they found, were more susceptible because plastic takes up space in their gut and things like that. I have not seen the most research that I've seen that has been, I would say, newsworthy has been the weird places that they are finding microplastics. I think we're still in many ways in the where are the plastics stage of research. And I think that the effect comes after, right? First, we figure out where all the plastic is, then we figure out what impact it's going to have, and then we move on to how can we fix it, right? And I think we're seeing impact stuff, but there has been no definitive like plastics are bad and they'll kill you thing or plastics are killing, right. I mean, yes, you see whales and birds washing up with guts full of plastic, and you can infer from that, plastic had a hand in the death of those animals. But I think we're a long ways away from anything definitive coming out.
I guess it gets into the problem there always is with the human health studies, which is it's so irreducibly complex, right? That you can maybe look at population-wide trends, but even then, that takes time.
Yeah, and I don't know, I could be very wrong, but I don't know of any experimental human studies that are going on where they're monitoring people or, it's not like they're going to feed people plastic and watch for results, right? I mean, that's not a thing that's going to happen, but they are, trying to find where the plastic is going, and they're finding it like in human lung tissue. They're finding it in our bloodstream. So we know that it's really pervasive in the human body. It's just to what end?
Yeah. And you also run into one of the problems with science thinking about that is it's easy to say, well, we need to wait for proof. We need to wait, maybe, but also like, why is it necessarily innocent until proven guilty, right? It can't be good. Like, we may not have proof, but it can't be good to have, little nurdles in your lungs.
I think in many ways, I think that's a somewhat uniquely American problem because we put things out into the marketplace and then you have to prove that they're unsafe before they get pulled. Whereas in Europe, they follow the precautionary principle and you have to prove that it's safe before it gets released. Plastics, I don't know if plastics, are the same as other other chemicals and things like that. But that's the line of thinking in other areas, but not in the United States.
I'm stuck on you saying that that plastic is flowing through our bloodstream. I mean, we're all working to take care that our cholesterol is not too high and everything, and we might just literally, die from like a plug of plastic.
Like you have to go get, what's it called when they have to clear out your arteries? Yes, but they're going in and they're clearing out little pieces of plastic. I mean, these are minuscule little teeny tiny pieces of nanoplastic, but plastic is plastic, right? So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, you might need an angioplasty. Who knows? So here's
you got the name picked out. There's the title for today's episode. You might need an angioplasty.
There it is. All right, here we go. Write that one down. All right, so you mentioned unusual places in which we're finding microplastics. Now, you start finding all kind of weird places. Obviously, that means that we need Sarah Zack's top 5 weird places that we are finding microplastics these days. And so I'm going to go number 5. We're going to do the drum roll. You're going to say it, and then we're going to do the symbol, or maybe Katie O'Reilly saying woo. Just depending. All right, so that's how we're going to do it. So number 5.
Honey.
Honey? How are they finding them in honey? Maybe. What?
I suspect it's from the air.
The air.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
wait a minute. Hold on. Air is on the... All right, let's go back. All right, number 6.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Holy smokes. So there's this little... I was unaware that there was microplastics floating in the air. As someone who respirates, I find that to be a little bit concerning. All right, number 4.
Sea salt.
Sea salt? So, because when they dig out the sea salt, of course, there's microplastics in the sea, and that evaporates away and leaves the salt and the plastic. This sounded so fun when I thought of the idea, but we're only 2 in, and I'm feeling a little bit
sad.
I know, and I'm like a major salt.
And it's all salt too. Sea salt, lake salt, rock salt.
That probably means that my beef sandwich from Al's #1 probably had little microplastics in it.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
That was totally,
nice thing is, you eat enough of those, you don't have to worry about the microplastics because something else will take you first. Number 3.
Chicken gizzards.
Chicken gizzards. The vital Great Lakes information. Chicken gizzards, because I guess, what is a gizzard? Yeah. I don't even know. It's an internal organ. It like does some. Is that what the little rocks are? Do they have little rocks in it?
Yes, I think it's where the little rocks are. And again, like that's got to be. It's in the feed. It's in the water. It's in the air. Probably all 3.
Yeah, and chicken. I mean, if you're giving them salt. All right, number 2.
I'll go humans. People.
Just generally. All right, the number 1 weird place where people are now finding scientists doing top science work or finding microplastics is
beer. I don't know if that's the weirdest place, but that tends to be when I talk about this stuff to folks. That's the one that really gets them. Beer. Yeah,
that's
not fun.
Yeah, because the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. Yeah, that's not so good. That is not so good. And my understanding is you also brought us a little plastics factoid. Is that correct? So before we go, it's going to be our, we haven't done this segment in quite some time, so I'm thrilled to bring it back, Renie. It's time for our Great Lakes factoid. It's a Great Lakes factoid, a Great Lakes factoid. It's a great factoid about the Great Lakes. All right, Sarah, let's hear our Great Lakes factoid.
Okay, so you got to give me a second to kind of set the stage here. So you talked before about inhalation, right? Like as someone who respirates, it freaks you out. That was an excellent segue into this fun fact, because this has to do with how many plastic particles on average people take in a year. And it's a lot. So people consume about 121,000 particles per year. And it's split almost 50-50 between what you eat and what you inhale. Really, inhalation can count for more. But the weirdest thing I think about this is that if you only drink bottled water, that adds another 90,000 particles per year.
Really?
But if you drink tap water, it only adds 4,000 particles per year.
Look at that. So a little bit.
So pro tap. But that's a lot of little pieces, right? Like that's like hundreds, potentially 200,000 pieces a year.
It could be. At least part of it.
What's that thing, Body Worlds, where they plasticized the people who had donated their bodies to science? Do you not remember that? Stuart, your face tells me.
No. What is that?
So that was a big, I want to say that it was like the early aughts, mid-aughts.
Oh, this was this museum exhibit. This was this exhibit.
It was at the Museum of Science and Industry.
I was in the Tampa Bay area at the time, and it came. I did not see it because it looked very creepy.
It was very cool because it's all these bodies that are in different positions and you can see all the muscles and everything, but they're plasticized.
I did not realize.
So maybe we're just doing it for them. And once we donate our bodies to science, they'll already have the plastic in them and they'll just have to skin us and put us in a museum.
There it is.
I mean, that's what it is. That's what Body Worlds was, but
fantastic.
It was really cool. But, apparently I'm that kind of person. So you are learning so much about me.
That was creepy, and I did not go. All right, well, we're turning from problems. You've done a nice job of depressing us. Let's sort of slide towards solutions and something cool that you have going on coming up. So plastic is, a lot of this is floating in the Great Lakes, like we talked about, at various levels. It starts off high, maybe, and then it gets a little bit lower, kind of like I did with this episode. I was starting off all happy to see Sarah Zack, and now...
I killed it.
I'm filled with regrets. And so you're involved with, you're involved with something called the NOAA Marine Debris Challenge. What exactly is the Marine Debris Challenge, and how are you involved?
So the Marine Debris Challenge is a grant program that NOAA is conducting with the Biden-Harris administration's Investing in America agenda. So this is a lot of the money that they're using as a part of the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed recently. And so this is the second year that they've had this challenge competition. And the idea is to propose big scale, interesting, unique, kind of cutting edge projects for removing marine debris of all shapes and sizes from all of our waters, right? Because NOAA deals with Great Lakes and,
Yeah, it's called marine, but the Great Lakes qualify because they're big enough. And they have senators too.
Yes. So we submitted a proposal working with a team from Northwestern University. They are doing all of the science, and I'm working with them on the outreach portion. And the idea is to develop an AI-assisted system to identify and capture nano and microplastics. For me, the coolest part of this project is that we're looking at these different scales, right? So we're going to try and integrate, or they, because they're way smarter and they're engineers and scientists, and this is not my cup of tea. They're going to be doing this at different scales, and so they're going to be using different technologies and integrating them to try to capture these plastics at different sizes, basically.
Okay. So the idea is to try to get them out of the water, or is it to prevent them from getting in the water?
Get them out of the water. We're hoping that this can be used with washing machines. We're going to work with Whirlpool to see if this can be used in developing a system or a device that can be added to washing machines for removing them before they get into the wastewater stream. And we're going to work with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Chicago to get samples from across the Chicagoland area and working with them to kind of educate about microplastics and look at the real waters in this area.
So would it be able to remove microplastics from the water itself?
That's a great question. I think it remains to be seen at like the scalability of this. I don't know but I will say for me, and maybe it's like I was a zoology major, so I'm into that kind of stuff. But for me, the coolest thing about this is that the largest scale it's bio-inspired by the hairy structures on whales and the way that whales filter out of the water, right? So that to me is just really, really cool. So there's these this tiny scale where you're using a technology that is intended to attract chemicals. And then there's another one that's sort of like a sponge that picks up, larger pieces. And then you have this one that's like a filtration inspired by whales.
No
which
kidding.
Is super cool.
And they're going to feed all of that into ChatGPT. And then it's going to
spit
out a solution.
Exactly.
That sounds good.
Yep.
No, but
and they gave us millions of dollars to do it.
Right. No, but it's interesting. So do you know how is, and you may not, this may be for the technical experts, but like how is AI involved exactly? Because everybody wants to involve that stuff, right?
And initially they had talked about doing like a cell phone app that would be able to sort of identify these things so that you could take pictures and use that, right, to like see what was there. But that is outside my area of expertise.
That sounds good.
In the next time we talk in another 40 episodes, I'm sure I'll be able to explain it very
25
well.
or 30 episodes. We can't go 40 episodes between Sarah. That's no good. Excellent. Well, no, this is really cool. It's Marine Debris Challenge. And so you're partnering with Whirlpool. You're partnering with smart scientists from a bunch of universities. Northwestern. Well, they're smart. Because they're probably at Al's Beef right now while we're recording a podcast. And so it's is this a 5-year project?
3. It's a 3-year project.
So you got to have quick results.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that these researchers that we're working with have all independently been working on, their technologies, and now it's just time to combine them in a way that is effective. So
Sea Grant is we fund research. We do a little bit of research, because especially at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, we have a little bit larger research capacity than most Sea Grant programs just because of the people who are on our staff. But what do you see as the role of people? But mostly what we do is we do science communication in a few different ways, right? Whether it's writing stories, interviewing people like Renie does, or this nonsense like I lead up, or it's the sort of bread and butter of what we do is our outreach program with just people like Sarah, who work to take that information and bring it to end users, bring it to the public, help to facilitate that. What do you think your role is on a project like this? And like, what is it that someone like you has to add to all of these scientists, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things about the Marine Debris Challenge is that a stipulation is that each of these research teams has to partner with a Sea Grant program, right? There has to be a solid outreach component to these projects, which I think, to their credit, right? To NOAA's credit for putting that in to make sure that this research doesn't just like get done and then fall into the black hole of scientific journals and isn't applicable. So for this project in particular, I'm going to be doing a lot of outreach to like the wastewater industry, which is not a group that I've worked with before. So I'm really excited to talk to these folks, and I'm hoping to partner with like local organizations and things like that to create virtual classes, I guess, on this. And in theory, some of these organizations offer credit, right? You can take so many of these classes a year, get credits, and you have to take so many classes to maintain your license or
CEU
things like that.
Things. Okay, sure.
Yep. So, if I can partner with them to make this a CEU type course, all the better. But really, I think at the end of the project, so first it's going to be about teaching people about microplastics, why we care, what they are, where they come from. At the end of the project, I'm hoping and thinking that my role is going to be helping to facilitate explaining these technologies to the public. Yeah. Right. Because if I can't explain it right now and it's my job and I'm a partner on this project, how are we going to expect your average person to understand sort of what's going on? So I'm hoping to be a liaison between the research team and the public when we start to sort of roll this out.
Thinking about working directly with industry, that gets me excited, as does eventually liaising with the public. Like I hear things about cell phone apps and whatever, and that could be cool, and that could be a really interesting application of technology, but a lot of projects like that tells me people aren't going to be out there photographing microplastics and sending them into a database. Like it doesn't mean it's not a valuable outreach tool. It doesn't mean it's not worth doing, but I feel like that's kind of, in my mind, in the same neighborhood as maybe we'll just eat our way out of the invasive species problem, through Goby dogs or whatever. I feel like there's other steps that we should be taking kind of simultaneously. And so it's exciting to hear that should be working directly with eventually the public, but in between then the middle people in the waste industry or wastewater industry. I think that's really cool. Yeah,
that was one of the parts of the project that was most exciting to me, is that not only did they plan to create this technology, but they brought Whirlpool in and partnered with Whirlpool to actually test it on something that consumers can get a hold of in theory eventually. That to me makes this really, really practical and more of a, we talk about like science research for research's sake, and then also, how do we apply this research? And they're already thinking about how they can apply their research, which I think is really great.
Yeah, it sort of circles back to at least a little bit on a larger scale, which is where this problem needs to be solved. Many different directions, but this is
and
particularly since we know that the fibers that are coming from washing machines and things like that are a huge portion of the plastics that are ending up in our water.
Oh, I know. After we talked about that, I did such a deep dive on this because it turns out the research is really complicated. Like, so if you have clothing that isn't a natural fiber, there's going to be some microplastics in there. And for a while, there was this thought that like, well, but if you get the blends, they don't release nearly as much, like a tri-blend or something, microplastics as pure polyester does. Oh. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I did a deep dive, and it turns out it really just depends on so many, I haven't done this in a couple of years, like so many different factors. Different types of blends were better than others. And anyway, it's just a freaking nightmare. And it's really
age of the fabric, how whether you have the age of the fabric, whether you have a like a front load or a what's it called when you've got the thing in the middle of your washing machine,
a thingy machine,
agitator, rotator, those all those things impact where these are, how these are shed and how fast.
No, so I think looking for supply side solutions is exactly right. Which is fascinating work, and I'm glad to be part of this marine. And this is big money that the federal government is giving out, right? What is the bottom line number across all these projects?
It was $27 million that they gave out this time, and this is the second year that they've done it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yep. Good, important, and valuable work. But that's actually not why we brought you here on Teach Me About the Great Lakes this week. The reason that we brought you on Teach Me About the Great Lakes is to ask you 2 questions. And the first one is this. And we've asked this before, but the thing is, people change. People evolve. Slowly, they get filled up with plastic. Their brain gets filled with plastic. It could cause their preferences to change. Or just, one matures. Or stasis state in which their opinions never change, which is kind of where I'm headed, and that's okay, too. That's part of the aging process. But the point is this. If you could choose to have a great donut for breakfast or a great sandwich for lunch, which one would you choose and why?
Such a hard question. So the last time I was on, I think I went sandwich.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not going to change that. This morning
too?
when I was, I'm going to go sandwich because I do enjoy a good donut, but they're over so quickly.
Yeah.
But a sandwich you can kind of savor and you can eat a donut in 3 or 4 bites and then it's gone.
That's true.
But yeah, and in particular, I was thinking this morning about this, and what popped into my head was like a really good tuna melt. Good tuna melt is hard to beat for me.
Fascinating. So you don't mind the the gross warmness. Okay, that's fine.
No, but apparently you do.
All right, so y'all are both in Chicago area, right? In the greater Chicago land area. Where can I go to get a mind-changingly good tuna melt? Or is it the Zack household? Where should I go to get a good tuna melt?
No, go to the Zack household because you got to go to a diner. Okay. Diner tuna is always the best tuna.
Okay.
You get it on rye bread, and if they want to give you American cheese, you say, no, give me real cheese, because American cheese, I don't think belongs on a tuna melt. It belongs on a cheeseburger. So those are my tips.
Just any old diner. All right, that sounds good.
Yeah, diners always have the best tuna for some reason.
Yeah. It's something about the vibe, right? I think a tuna melt is a vibe sandwich. Yeah.
It's like an old-fashioned type thingy, right? Like it's a sandwich that's been around.
No, it's perfect.
It's probably
you put you can put potato chips.
Much.
Yeah, you could put some potato chips in your tuna melt to give it a little crunch. You ever do that?
A little crunch.
Crunch.
I'm on board with that.
Renie, are you a tuna melt? And if so, where should I go to get a tuna melt?
Are you a tuna melt?
Are you a tuna melt? Yeah.
Actually, I love tuna melts, but I make them for myself.
There it is.
And that's the only way I've actually
Sarah, next time I'm there, we'll go to the Miles household.
So come on by.
Yeah, we'll go to Renie's.
And I try to do it quick enough in the broiler so that it melts the cheese, but doesn't warm up the tuna.
Excellent.
Because it's open face,
all right? Renie, do you want to tackle question number 2?
Yes. So, Sarah, do you have a favorite place in the Great Lakes that you like to go? And
I do. So I spent the better part of the last 20 years living in Rogers Park, which is the northeasternmost neighborhood inside the city limits of Chicago, butts up right next to Northwestern. Rogers Park is a fantastic neighborhood. Renie, you used to live in Rogers Park, right? You know about Rogers Park. Yep. Loyola grad. So there you go. Rogers Park, in my opinion, has the best beach in Chicago.
Really?
And that is Loyola Beach, right? I think it might be the biggest. I think it is the biggest. But it's just a gorgeous stretch of beach. And when I lived there, we spent a lot of time going down to the beach. The first sand my daughter ever touched was the beach there. We used to take her down all the time, and she loved it. But they have, in particular, I love being on the beach at the lake, full stop, but there is a beautiful stretch of path that you have sort of at the, you hit the path and then you walk and you're in the sand. So it's sort of set back from the water. The whole thing is lined with a bench. And every year they have an event where they repaint the benches. So you get like a 4-foot section, and it's just a concrete sloped bench. But they divide it up, and anybody can get a section. And it's just, by the end, it's just a series of artwork. Some of them are political. Some of them are in memorials. Some of them are just beautiful. It's just this huge array of people's art right there at the beach. And it's one of my favorite places.
No kidding.
For sure. As long as they keep having these contests, the Rogers Park, the city councilor, whoever, goes in and they paint it white before it every year. So everybody has a fresh canvas, but they always get more requests, at least historically always got more requests for space than they were able to give because people were really excited to have a little section of bench.
What a wonderful thing. will.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I'll have to go check it
Sit on the
out.
bench and eat a tuna melt, too. It'd be just perfect.
There you go.
Sarah Zack, Pollution Prevention Extension Specialist, Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. And 3 or 4 uncountable number of times guest on Teach Me About the Great Lakes because you were uncountably and immeasurably awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and teaching us all about the Great Lakes.
Glad to have been here.
Always good to talk to Sarah, especially on episode 100.
Yeah.
And Carolyn was a surprise guest on episode number 1. That was back when Hope was the co-host. And we brought Carolyn in because Sarah had mentioned that meta-analysis, and that had just come out. And that's when we found out that Carolyn enjoyed doing this, and we enjoyed having her on. And so since then, she's become probably our go-to co-host and our I forgot what her title. We have fake titles. I made up titles. I don't even know what they're supposed to be. But eventually, she became whatever her current fake title is. It is a senior producer. Wow, fancy.
Yes, it's a great little story.
Yeah, there it is. It was a real meet cute, and here we are all these years later. That is excellent. Well, yeah, I was trying to sum up episode 100. I don't even know if that makes any sense to do. And the 3 things that I think I have really learned, the overarching themes, are one, is that I had no idea how new the Great Lakes are, right? You can go back to episode 2 when we spoke with Michael Twist about the formation of the Great Lakes, and they're relatively new, just since the last ice age. So that was something interesting that I had no idea, because they're so massive. You assume they've been around forever, but they haven't been around as long as people have been around in this area. So that's good. The sort of second thing is like how just unbelievably intertwined they are with humans, right? Because we have, what is it? Like the Great Lakes itself, I can't remember. It would be like the 3rd or 4th biggest economy in the world, something like that. A top 10 economy in the world, the Great Lakes region. And, people have been using this since the Anishinaabe and like to today, through areas of concern and all the way into today, like the amount that we've been using these Great Lakes. And as Titus says, Titus Seilheimer, Dr. Fish, from Wisconsin Sea Grant, he likes to talk about, we have the lakes that we have at this point. They're not natural, they're not man-made, but they are what we have. And so it's a question of what can we do with what it is that we have. And that's sort of another big theme, I think. And then the other big theme, it hasn't come up in a while, but it's the importance of the work that like governments are doing and government science and monitoring. So often, we haven't spoken with a scientist about this sort of stuff in a while, but so often, like, there's all these long-term data sets that are only being collected because NOAA's collecting them, or because the DNR is collecting them, or something like that. And that data can become unbelievably valuable, but it only becomes valuable when you have decades of it. And so that sort of stuff is hard to fund sometimes because it's not always exciting and immediately actionable, but it can become very important. So those are my big Great Lakes themes.
Nice. Yeah. I know for me, it's like, for those of us who grew up along the Great Lakes and work with the Great Lakes, just, like all these various issues that have come to, be discussed on this show, it's like it just really deepens and makes it all much more richer.
All right.
Teach Me About the Great Lakes is brought to you by the fine people at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. We encourage you to check out the cool stuff we do at iiseagrant.org and at ILIN Sea Grant on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media.
Our senior producer is Carolyn Foley. Look at that. A rocket ship from unannounced secret guest to senior producer in a mere 100 episodes. And Teach Me About the Great Lakes is produced by Megan Lake Lover Gunn and Renie Miles. Ethan Chitty is our associate producer and fixer, and our coordinating producer is Motia Gumbiade. Our super fun podcast artwork is by Joel Davenport, and the show is edited by the incomparable Sandro Svoboda.
If you have a question or comment about the show, please email it to teachmeaboutthegreatlakes@gmail.com or leave a message on our hotline at 765-496-IISG. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Teach Great Lakes. Thanks for listening and keep grading those lakes.